The final whistle blew, Spain were crowned world champions, and everything changed in an instant. Instead of the usual respectful reactions after a major final, people across the football world started speaking with surprising honesty. In TV studios, post-match interviews, radio shows, and all over social media, legendary players, coaches, pundits, and even some of the footballers who were caught up in the chaos began saying what many had been thinking all along. When you put all of those reactions together, it no longer feels like random opinions from different people. It starts to sound like one clear message that almost everyone agrees on. So before jumping to any conclusions, let's hear what those inside the game have been saying. Their comments paint a serious picture of why several Argentina players are now under FIFA investigation and could be facing major World Cup suspensions. The criticism has been loud, direct, and impossible to ignore. Here's how everything unfolded. Spain defeated Argentina 1-0 after extra time to lift the World Cup trophy, but the moments after the final whistle quickly grabbed almost as much attention as the match itself. As Spain celebrated, cameras appeared to capture Nahuel Molina making contact with Rodri during a heated exchange. Leandro Paredes was also seen grabbing Eric Garcia around the neck area before Gavi was pulled to the ground during the confrontation. Those tense scenes spread everywhere within minutes. The situation became even bigger when television footage appeared to show Argentina assistant coach Roberto Ayala involved in a confrontation with Spain's Dani Olmo, with his hands near the player's neck during the chaos. To make matters even more controversial, many Argentina players turned away while Spain celebrated with the trophy. FIFA has since confirmed a formal disciplinary investigation into the incidents, and possible suspensions are now being seriously discussed. The pressure is only getting bigger from here. That was the situation on the pitch. Now let's look at what some of football's biggest names had to say, because their reactions were impossible to ignore. Start with Thierry Henry, someone who knows exactly what it feels like to play in a World Cup final. He didn't overreact, and he didn't try to create drama for headlines. Instead, he focused on one thing that he believes should never disappear, even in the most emotional moments: respect. Henry explained it clearly. You can lose control for a split second, he said, recognizing just how intense a World Cup final can be. He's lived through that pressure himself, so he understands the emotions better than almost anyone. But he also made it clear that respect cannot simply vanish because the match is over. He said the biggest memory for young fans should be the football, not players fighting after the final whistle. Henry called the scenes disappointing, and he added something that caught a lot of attention. If FIFA's investigation confirms what has been reported, he would not be surprised to see suspensions handed out. That wasn't a rival taking shots. That was one of football's most respected voices saying possible bans would be justified. Wayne Rooney was even more direct. He summed up his opinion in just 2 words: ban them. There was no confusion about where he stood. Rooney argued that football has to draw a line somewhere. If players believe they can behave like that after the biggest match in the world without serious consequences, it sends the wrong message to every team watching. At the same time, he added a more skeptical thought that many fans have also been discussing. Rooney suggested that FIFA has sometimes found ways to avoid the toughest punishments, leaving people wondering whether this case will be handled any differently. Then came Zlatan Ibrahimovic, and his response sounded exactly like something only Zlatan would say. Watching the confrontation involving Leandro Paredes and Gavi, Zlatan claimed that if he had been on the pitch, he would have headbutted Paredes himself, accepted the red card, and defended his teammate without hesitation. He also criticized Spain's players, saying they should have done more instead of simply watching the incident unfold. His reaction was dramatic, bold, and instantly became one of the most talked about comments after the final. That's Zlatan being Zlatan, so plenty of people took his comments with a smile. But if you look past the dramatic delivery, his main point was exactly the same as everyone else's. In his view, Leandro Paredes had crossed a line that simply should not have been crossed. His reaction may have sounded over the top, but the message behind it matched the growing criticism coming from all corners of the football world. The television commentators were reaching similar conclusions while everything was still unfolding live. Alan Shearer described seeing Paredes throw what looked like multiple punches during the confrontation, while Joe Hart didn't waste time searching for complicated words. He summed up the entire scene with just 2: disgusting behavior. Those comments came in the heat of the moment, before anyone had time to carefully analyze replays or hear official statements, making their reactions even more striking. The criticism also wasn't just coming from rivals or neutral observers. Spain manager Luis de la Fuente addressed the incidents even while celebrating his team's World Cup triumph. Instead of spending every interview talking about the victory, he chose to speak about what happened after the final whistle. He described Argentina's conduct as intolerable and unacceptable, making it clear that the actions surprised him because many of those players were footballers he had openly praised before. He also pointed out that his own squad stayed composed despite the tense and emotional situation. That says a lot. When a World Cup winning coach spends part of his celebration discussing discipline and self-control instead of simply enjoying the biggest moment of his career, it suggests the post-match scenes left a lasting impression. As more respected voices reached similar conclusions, the conversation became less about isolated opinions and more about a shared view across the football community. Spain's players seemed confident they had won the moral battle as well. During the victory parade in Madrid, teenage star Lamine Yamal was seen smiling while holding up a fan-made sign joking about the confrontation by comparing it to a celebrity boxing event, adding one final viral moment to an already unforgettable story. That was the biggest clue of all. Spain's newly crowned world champions looked so unfazed by everything that happened after the final whistle that their young star, Lamine Yamal, was comfortable laughing about it during the victory parade. In front of huge crowds, he held up a fan-made sign poking fun at the confrontation. When the team you clashed with is joking about the incident while celebrating on an open-top bus, it's hard to argue that your side came out looking better. Still, not everyone believed a standard suspension would be enough. Some former players argued that FIFA should make an example of those involved to discourage similar incidents in the future. Among the strongest voices was former Aston Villa striker Gabby Agbonlahor, who spoke passionately on talkSPORT about why the punishment needed to send a clear message. As he put it, "You can be angry you lost, but you stay classy in defeat." He added that if Paredes wanted to settle things physically, a World Cup football pitch was not the place to do it. Agbonlahor was particularly critical of the moment involving Gavi, who was 21 years old during the tournament. He condemned the way Paredes handled the situation and described the actions as completely unacceptable. His opinion left no room for doubt, as he even labeled Paredes a coward during the discussion. Then he went even further, saying, "I would ban him from the whole next tournament if I had my way." That would be far more severe than the minimum suspension many people have been talking about, showing just how strongly he felt about the incident. But then came the biggest surprise of all. The person who showed the most restraint wasn't a commentator, a former player, or a coach. It was Gavi himself, one of the players directly involved in the confrontation. When he was later asked whether Argentina's players should face suspensions, his answer caught many people off guard. Instead of calling for harsh punishments, he simply said no, offering a very different perspective from many of the loudest voices surrounding the controversy. "To be honest," Gavi said, "I don't think they should be banned." It was a response that surprised a lot of people. Even after everything that happened, he chose not to call for harsh punishments. He admitted the scenes created a bad image for football, especially for young fans watching around the world. But he also argued that football has always had emotional and physical moments. In his view, the proper solution would have been to deal with the incident immediately during the match, instead of handing out suspensions weeks later. That is an incredibly measured response from someone who was directly involved in the confrontation, and it deserves to be heard. Gavi's argument is probably the strongest case against lengthy bans. His point was simple. If a player crosses the line, deal with it on the pitch with a red card, then move on. Don't allow a few chaotic moments after one match to define someone's entire career. Whether people agree with him or not, it's a thoughtful opinion, and it stands out because it came from one of the players at the center of the incident, rather than someone watching from the outside. But that also made another part of the story impossible to ignore. While many voices across football were discussing responsibility and consequences, there were very few public comments from Argentina's side that reflected on what had happened. That contrast became part of the conversation just as much as the confrontation itself. Leandro Paredes, who was one of the central figures in the post-match scenes, eventually broke his silence with a long message focused on pride, passion, and representing Argentina. He described it as an honor to be part of what he called the greatest Argentina national team in history and spoke about his love for the badge and his country. What caught many people's attention, however, was that the statement did not directly address the physical confrontation that had become the focus of FIFA's investigation. That absence quickly became another talking point as debate around the incident continued to grow. Enzo Fernandez, who had already been sent off during the final, also shared a public message after the match. Instead of talking about the dismissal or the heated scenes that followed the final whistle, he praised the squad for competing with pride, humility, and commitment. His statement focused entirely on the team's spirit, leaving out any mention of the controversy that had quickly become one of the biggest stories in world football. Head coach Lionel Scaloni took a similar approach. He stood firmly behind his players, describing them as warriors and pushing back against critics by saying many of them don't know us. Earlier, he had also insisted that his team knew how to accept defeat. Those comments sparked even more discussion because many observers felt they did not fully address the incidents that FIFA was now investigating. Then there was Lionel Messi. As captain and one of the most respected figures in football history, many people wondered whether he would publicly comment on the confrontation. Instead, he remained silent about the post-match scenes. That meant several of Argentina's biggest names responded by expressing pride in the team's efforts, rather than directly discussing the events that had drawn worldwide attention. There was, however, one notable exception. Assistant coach Roberto Ayala, who appeared on camera during a confrontation involving Dani Olmo, publicly apologized. "Obviously, I am sorry," he said, admitting that he rushed into the situation and allowed his emotions to take over. It was the closest thing to a direct apology from inside Argentina's camp. But the conversation didn't end there. Ayala also suggested his actions were a reaction to something he believed Olmo had said and argued the incident was more of a shove than a punch. Olmo strongly rejected that explanation. Speaking afterward, he said that blaming someone's words while apologizing does not sound like genuine remorse. He also disputed Ayala's version of events, saying he had not said anything to provoke him. As a result, even the only public apology from Argentina's side remained a subject of debate, with both men offering very different accounts of what had happened. That's the bigger point many of these football figures were making. It wasn't only about what happened in those chaotic moments after the final whistle, it was also about everything that followed. Many critics felt there was never a clear, straightforward statement that simply said, "We were wrong." That became a major part of the discussion as the days passed, and reactions continued to pour in from across the football world. At the same time, it's important to look at the full picture. Argentina are widely respected as a talented and united squad, and Lionel Scaloni's emotions after losing a World Cup final were clearly genuine. His message about his warriors, their commitment, and their determination reflected the words of a coach who deeply believes in his players. Very few people can truly understand the emotions that come with losing the biggest match in football, especially after giving everything on the pitch. It's also worth remembering Gavi's response. Despite being one of the players involved in the confrontation, he did not call for heavy punishments. He argued that the incident should have been handled during the match rather than through lengthy suspensions afterward. That's a reasonable perspective, and many fans share that opinion. A lifetime ban was never a realistic possibility, and even long suspensions for a brief post-match confrontation remain something people continue to debate. There is certainly an argument that the best solution would have been a red card for those responsible, financial penalties for the federation, if appropriate, and then moving forward. That is a fair position, and it reflects the view Gavi expressed. But many observers believe the bigger issue wasn't only the confrontation itself, it was the public response afterward. Thierry Henry summed it up with a simple reminder: you can lose control for a second, but respect should never disappear. For critics, that became the heart of the debate. They pointed to moments like players turning away during the trophy presentation, public messages focused on pride rather than reflection, and an apology that was later challenged, arguing those events kept the controversy alive long after the final whistle. Now, the next chapter belongs to FIFA. The discussions, opinions, and reactions have all led to one place, and that's the governing body's disciplinary process. Under FIFA's disciplinary rules, sanctions for violent conduct or large-scale confrontations can begin with a 3-match suspension and increase depending on each person's level of involvement. If penalties are handed down, they could affect World Cup qualifiers and even future international tournaments. This is also not the only disciplinary matter linked to Argentina from the competition, making the situation even more closely watched. Alongside the investigation into the post-match confrontation, FIFA is also reviewing a separate issue involving a political banner displayed by Argentina's players after the semi-final against England. That means two different disciplinary cases are connected to the same tournament. At the moment, though, there is still one major question hanging over everything. FIFA has not announced when decisions will be made, and with no immediate competitive fixtures on the schedule, nobody knows exactly when any possible suspensions would take effect. Even before FIFA reaches a decision, many people believe the wider consequences are already beginning to appear. Reports have suggested that Real Madrid decided against pursuing Enzo Fernandez during the summer transfer window. According to those reports, concerns extended beyond his footballing ability and included the overall impression created by his conduct during the tournament. While transfer decisions are influenced by many different factors, the controversy became part of the public conversation surrounding his future. The impact may not stop there. Veteran goalkeeper Emiliano Martinez, one of the key figures in Argentina's 2022 World Cup triumph and one of the most recognizable faces of this generation, has openly spoken about considering his international future. Whether or not that decision is connected to recent events, it adds another layer to an already dramatic period for the national team. As FIFA's investigation continues, Argentina now faces questions both on and off the pitch, with many waiting to see what comes next. In many ways, this feels like a difficult chapter for one of Argentina's most successful generations. A team that created unforgettable memories on the biggest stages is now also dealing with questions about how this tournament will be remembered. For many fans and commentators, the dramatic scenes after the final whistle have become an unavoidable part of that story, adding controversy to what should have been remembered only for football. Looking at the reaction across the sport, one thing stands out. Many respected voices strongly criticize what happened after the match. Former players, coaches, television analysts, and commentators all expressed concern about the confrontation and argued that those responsible should face consequences if FIFA's investigation confirms wrongdoing. At the same time, Gavi, one of the Spain players directly involved, took a different approach by arguing against lengthy suspensions, making his response one of the most unexpected in the entire debate. That contrast is hard to ignore. Spain's head coach criticized the incidents, several football legends publicly condemned them. Television pundits questioned the behavior, and transfer speculation surrounding some players only added to the wider conversation. Now the spotlight shifts entirely to FIFA. As Wayne Rooney suggested, the remaining question is whether football's governing body will apply whatever disciplinary action it believes is appropriate, or whether the final outcome will leave supporters on both sides still arguing long after this World Cup final has passed into history. We've seen FIFA face big disciplinary decisions before, and plenty of fans are waiting to see whether this case will bring meaningful consequences or a lighter response. The football world has shared its opinions, the investigation is underway, and now all eyes are on the people responsible for making the final decision. The debate is far from settled, so now it's your turn. Do you agree more with Wayne Rooney's view that strong suspension should be handed out, or do you side with Gavi, who believes the incident should have been dealt with during the match with a red card and left there? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments because I'm really interested to hear where you stand. And as soon as FIFA announces its official ruling, I'll be here to break down every decision, every suspension, and what it means going forward. So make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, share it with other football fans, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next update. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.